So as you just heard, this webinar is being recorded and I will share more on that shortly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty, well, we are at noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining for this month's Your Hour with APA Virginia, which is sponsored by the Berkeley Group. This webinar will touch on Botetourt County, and we'll dive into their efforts on how they're collaborating, with local developers to create new, more equitable housing in the county, focusing on diversifying the housing stock and the price points of available housing. You can see our CM number listed here for CM credit. I will also share that in the chat box momentarily. I will share more on our speakers in just a second. Here is our website. I will share the link to that as well. So we really do encourage questions, but please submit your questions through the Q&A box for the more formal Q&A portion of the webinar. But when the presenters will prompt you for engagement, you're welcome to use the chat box for the more open-ended questions. You can also use the raise hand feature to request to be unmuted during the Q&A portion at the end. And feel free to direct message me using the chat feature if you have any logistical questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and switch over screen sharing capabilities to our speakers while I introduce them a little bit more. Alrighty, so we have Jonathan McCoy and Nicole Pendleton joining us. We really appreciate their participation. They presented with us at the conference in Roanoke a few months ago, and the presentation was so well received that we thought it'd be great to have them in the webinar series as well. So Nicole Pendleton joined the Botetourt County team 9 years ago and now serves as the Director of Community Development. Her passion includes working with a team to seek solutions and creative approaches with folks who want to be a part of Botetourt County. Nicole has 19 years of experience in her field, including community planning and development, housing, zoning, grants, and floodplain administration. She's a Leadership Roanoke Valley alum and past chair of the Roanoke Regional Housing Network. She holds a master's degree from the University of Virginia in Urban and Regional Planning and an undergraduate degree in Environmental Sciences and Environmental Thought and Practice. Jonathan McCoy is a long-range planner for Botetourt County. He earned his double master's of Urban and Regional Planning and Public Administration from Virginia Tech in December of 2019, assisting with researching and teaching. Jonathan earned an ICMA, Local Government Early Career Service Certificate, and the 2019 Larkin Dudley MPA Student Paper Award as a student. While in his last semester at Virginia Tech, Jonathan worked with Roanoke County Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism as a planner, assisting staff with development applications for funding for greenway and trail development, map making, research, and attending regional body meetings as a staff representative. Following his graduation, Jonathan joined the Berkeley Group as a planning consultant. In this role, Jonathan provided planning support on a variety of projects, including multiple comprehensive plan updates, zoning and subdivision ordinance updates, a hazard management plan, and was the lead on a housing study. While with the Berkeley Group, Jonathan honed his skills in writing, research, and implementing planning tools at the local and regional levels. In August of 2021, Jonathan joined Botetourt County as a planner focused on long-range planning. As a long-range planner, Jonathan is the lead project manager on the county's effort to update the comprehensive plan. Jonathan is also heavily involved in transportation planning, submitting project funding requests through Smart Scale, serving on regional transportation committees, and serving as primary contact for ongoing transportation projects. Jonathan also supports recreation planning in Botetourt, working with Parks and Recreation Department on site development and funding requests. He has also been involved in zoning updates and short-range planning, including subdivision, plat, site and review plan, site plan review, special exception, and rezoning application reviews, and regularly presents at Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors public hearings. So we're really appreciative. We really appreciate Jonathan and Nicole for joining us. And since it is 12:05, I'm going to hand it over. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And again, keep your eyes peeled on the chat box for further instructions.
Well, thank you so much, Jillian. Forgot about some of those things that I guess I've done before. A lot of that happened pre-COVID, so that's kind of feels like many, many decades ago now that we're kind of in a post-COVID world, but definitely appreciate that. We're definitely excited. As Jillian said, my name is Jonathan McCoy. I do long-range planning here in Botetourt County, and I'm joined today by Nicole Pendleton, who is the Director of Community Development here with Botetourt. Nicole has been here for just a little while longer than I have. And has been a Botetourt resident for a very long time. So she's very invested in the community. And we're here to talk to you today about our efforts to expand and improve housing in Botetourt County. Our 4 goals here today, it's just one of them, of course, is just a follow up from our presentation back in June and kind of update a few of the details that we shared there. But overall, it's to define and discuss the housing landscape in Botetourt County, which includes both shortcomings and needs, to review those planning steps, the genesis of active housing planning, and the various programs and projects we undertook to get to where we are today, and then to share those findings, the things that worked and what didn't work as well, and the results of our active planning, and then discuss some opportunities to duplicate some of our success, to connect that to your localities and your jurisdictions, and share some takeaways from our experiences. So without further ado, I'll get into it. I'm a little bit of a data guy. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds for anybody, and I do apologize if you were with us in person at the planning conference back in June. I had candy that I presented out to everyone who answered questions. I cannot find a way to logistically do that for you today virtually. So hopefully you brought your own candy and are just snacking away while we chat. Hope you have your lunch in front of you, maybe, and can enjoy that while we have this conversation. So maybe I'll mail you some candy if you're particularly good, but otherwise, just sit back and enjoy. So location-wise, if you're not familiar with Botetourt County, we're just north of Roanoke County, and we have roughly 550 square miles. So not a small county, not the biggest one in Virginia either. It's home to many beautiful outdoor assets, which includes the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Appalachians. It's home, this is one of my favorite little trivia nuggets of information about Botetourt, is that it's home to the headwaters of the James River and features the Appalachian Trail that traces its way across the southern portion of the county. Population-wise, Botetourt has roughly 34,000 citizens, which places us firmly in the middle of the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission region for population. Weldon Cooper Center data predicts Botetourt growing slowly but consistently over the next 2 decades. And additionally, Botetourt's population is expected to continue aging like many of the more rural communities across the Commonwealth. Education-wise, Botetourt citizens are very well educated, especially compared to our region. We're largely rural. So geographically speaking, we've got some suburban development in the south, but a large part of the county is still rural. We've got 3 towns in the county that handle their own planning and zoning. A very large piece of the historical fabric of Botetourt is agriculture and farming. But over the past 20 years or so, we've seen a lot of our former farms and orchards been converted into commercial and residential development as growth continues to occur. Economically speaking, Botetourt has the highest median family and household income in the region, roughly $15,000 higher than the average, and it's just about on par with Virginia's own median figures. Perhaps unsurprisingly because of this, Botetourt is ranked among the lowest in the region for poverty. I prefer looking at the ALICE designation, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's the Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed designation. It gives you a little bit more of a robust understanding of some of the lower economics, some of the economic trends in the county. And about 25% of Botetourt County is in that asset limited, income constrained, and employed category. So if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to look at it. I think it provides a better piece of the puzzle than just looking at the poverty line personally. Last thing I'll mention about that economic is just the employment. Botetourt's largest employment sector is in manufacturing. We've got several large employers, which include Altec, Dynex, Tulsa, and Eldor. And then the whole reason why we're here today, of course, is to talk about housing. So just to give you a little frame of reference there, Botetourt has about 15,000 housing units, which is pretty significantly lower than some of the other localities in our area. Roanoke City, Roanoke County, Franklin County, the nearest of those has 30,000 housing units. So we've got about half of what a lot of other localities in the area have. Of those nearly 15,000 housing units, 83% are single family detached households. So there's not a lot of variety historically in the housing stock in Botetourt County, but that's gradually changing a little bit with the addition of some multifamily and townhouse developments that have occurred over the past 10 to 15 years. I'll summarize all this by saying that Botetourt's growing manufacturing sector, combined with development pressures from Roanoke City, and the lack of a diverse housing stock presented a real issue for us. We have the opportunity to absorb new population, but we don't have the housing stock to do it very well. And the housing stock that we do have is not necessarily affordable to a wide variety of individuals. So with that being said, we've got a need in Botetourt to spur some housing development. We, as Nicole will get into in here just a moment, put work into developing a plan to address that need. And we're currently putting that plan into action and doing that, just seeing what's working and trying to reiterate and moving forward with that. So I'll take a pause on speaking for a moment, and I will pass it over to Nicole, who is much better at addressing some of these things than I am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to be here. I will say that just like John, I'm a little bit constrained by being behind a screen. I just presented also on Friday and like throwing things to and at the audience. And so I will also I'll make an offer. I have a bag of candy here and we had some cool swag. So if you all ever are this way, we'd love to give you an in-person tour and show you what Botetourt's all about. So please stop by and see us. So basically how all of this really came to be is the opportunity for a lot of the changes that are occurring in the county really started as far back as 2007 when the exit 150 area, which is a major interchange in the county, the VDOT recognized that the interchange was creating some traffic issues along the interstate. And there was a truck stop there at the time. And if you've been through the area, you'll know it's not a great place. I don't generally have endearing terminology when I talk about it. In any of the conferences, you'll hear me say there's a former Shoney's. We're waiting on the demo of that any day now for some new development. But the Shoney's has a sign up that in the night typically reads SOS. It's a pain point for me. And a goal of mine is again, to see a lot of this redevelopment. And a lot of the commercial development is really coming about as a result of the residential development that has been really spurred from our political will and the effort by the Board of Supervisors and the administration and the support that they've given to the planning staff to be able to generate some of this new change and the opportunity. So again, came about as the result of transportation improvements by VDOT and recognizing that there was a once in a lifetime opportunity to really look through how we could potentially look at how we could make Botetourt and specifically the entrance to Botetourt a better place with not just the transportation improvements, but all around opportunities for comprehensive change as well. So having some opportunities for commercial transportation and how that links to housing. We'll go into just kind of a timeline of events. And then before John and I arrived, the 2010 comprehensive plan was really the first time in which the board really said, hey, let's look at some more urban style growth. And John, I'm gonna get you to go ahead and pop that slide. Thank you. Really where we could start to target some urban style growth areas and really identified, and we'll see this is the exit 150 in another area we're seeing come to fruition as a regional mixed-use location. So the board really said, hey, we've been a bedroom community of the Roanoke area for so long, but I think that it's really time to diversify the housing options. And it's really critically important that we need to do this, and we need to have more opportunities for housing other than just the suburban style housing that had typically been a focus of Botetourt for quite some time. So as the interchange was redesigning, and you'll see here the roundabout as it was coming into construction, this really was a once in a generation opportunity to open development up. And then the board said, hey, not only do we really want to update the comprehensive plan, but really prior to generating this land use update to the comprehensive plan, let's go ahead and do a market study and an area plan so that we can make sure that the market can support and the area plan, that they can kind of speak to each other. There's really no purpose in creating a comprehensive plan that per se is grossly out of alignment with what the market would support and vice versa, and just really wanting to have some type of understanding about how really all of the pictures support each other. So it's funny as we move into when we did this presentation, it's just so funny to think about how quickly we started in 2007, again, before our time, but then we really started to see how all of these plans were taking place. Lots of players and lots of allies across the state helping us, lots of consultants with Renaissance. We had our friends RKG and Associates and really just helping us to set the tone. And so when the Gateway Crossing area plan was adopted, we also had assistance with through OIP. So getting that technical assistance was a big component. Botetourt isn't a big locality. We don't have a lot of funding for, to get a lot of consultants at that point in time. I'm not even sure we had maybe just received funding for a long range planner. Didn't have one before I came on board here. So really, just finding the partnerships is critical, finding the opportunities to connect the dots, finding the opportunities to connect the dots between a transportation opportunity and transportation funding and those kinds of things, and linking them all together. So we really looked at, again, how can we help folks understand the importance of pedestrian-oriented design, mixed use, and how we can find opportunities for stratifying the housing market. Through all that, we developed new future land use categories that were mixed density as well. And so from that, we just continued to say, okay, what is the next step? What is the next step? And from there, we had a rental market analysis, and we held a housing summit here at the county offices. And we brought folks in actually from across the region, from across the state. Housing Virginia funded this, as well as a further housing study, even past this initial housing market analysis. And really what we said is the county really does care about housing, and we want to link partners together. So, we had lots of opportunities. One of the things I thought that was really interesting, we just had a session. It really was just a networking opportunity for folks to meet with not only housing providers, but your funders, your infrastructure providers, your broadband providers, your really anybody who would be engaged or really knew kind of all of the things that were happening, just a room for people to connect and network and build time into that for people to say, well, I do know that this opportunity is here. I know such and such person. And because of that, we were really able to say, hey, we're here for you. We're here to be a part of the conversation. And we really want to link people together. So just continue to capitalize on those opportunities and move forward. And then, channeled right into our next partnership and our next opportunity with folks. I'm going to see, let's see, what did we do? Next we did. So then we had another toolkit, and we jumped off of the rental market analysis, and that really did say, and all of these things, we've got some great resources on our website that say, yes, there's opportunity for rental. There's a rental demand out there. Then even just a few months ago, we had that study updated. But in 2019, Renaissance even looked at the entire bigger picture. What are the best opportunities for housing in the county? Where are the biggest opportunity areas? And a lot of those, honestly, we've had two of those opportunity areas have been rezoned for housing at this point. And I'll talk a little bit about that and how can we provide changes to the policies and provide opportunities just to make things easier for the development community where it makes sense to do that. At the Rural Planning Caucus this weekend, I presented with Bill Fritz out of Albemarle, and one of the best things that he provided was he said, hey, just get out of the way. Really, the best thing that you can do is to get out of the way. That, you know, where the market can support good development and where you can be receptive to it. If you're identifying opportunities, just get out of the way, reduce those development restrictions at the regulatory level, and you'll see how quickly things can happen. So with that being said, I think I'm turning it back over to John at this point. John, am I turning it back? I am turning it back over to you, and I'll be back in just a little bit. Thank you.
Fantastic. So thank you, Nicole. I think through all that, you've seen since 2007, if not before, a consistent and pointed effort to get to a place where we can support housing, where, as Nicole said, where we can get out of the way and tailor things to locations that make sense for housing. So it comes to that, the age-old adage in housing is location, 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 right? Real estate, the location matters a lot. And so our efforts, our concerns, and I think our goals as planners is to find a way to support development that just improves Botetourt's character. It doesn't necessarily change the character, but it improves that character of Botetourt. So we wanted to encourage growth where it makes sense. And to do so, we also simultaneously had a desire to protect the rural character and some of the rustic views in other areas of the county. So a lot of concerns we've heard from the community and the public are just a changing Botetourt County. And we understand that. We understand that development can move quick. It can be concerning. It can be a little scary from time to time, especially when it happens somewhat drastically in a certain location. But our desire is to keep some of that development in locations where it makes sense, that it's not going to spill over into areas and dominate the rural character of the county. And so that we really want to facilitate that incremental change. We don't want this to happen just suddenly without poor planning efforts or without any vision to it. It's something that we want to encourage in a location that makes sense. So that brings us to our gateway crossing area. So Nicole mentioned it earlier. We have this gateway crossing area plan. They worked with Renaissance to implement and actually adopt into our comprehensive plan. It's around exit 150. I'm sure all or most of you have been on I-81 and have probably been through this location. It's truly the gateway of Botetourt County. If you come to Botetourt from anywhere else, you're likely either coming on I-81, US 220, or US Route 11 to get here. And you've probably been in this area. It's incredibly important to us. It is something that is the first thing that people really recognize as Botetourt. And it's also important to note that it's only less than 1% of Botetourt's total square mileage to the county. There's 550 square miles. This is 1 square mile of it. But it's such an important and necessary aspect of our county that we needed some sort of small area plan to guide this vision, to guide development, to understand what we want to see from this location, because it's so important to us. And it's a gateway not only to us, but the rest of the Roanoke Valley, Shenandoah Valley, Central Virginia, and to the Virginia Highlands. So what was it? I don't want to rehash everything that was in the plan. It's very nice. As Nicole said, it's located online. So if you want to take a look through it, feel free to do so. But it was a small area plan that identified the needs and opportunities of the gateway crossing location. As I said, it was one of those things that we wanted to focus most development in a suitable location. And this location has existing infrastructure. It has water and sewer. It has a well-functioning road network that can support additional growth. So we wanted to target growth in this location. And as you folks know, just wishing for development doesn't make it happen. We needed to adopt tools that would support that vision that we created, which was a walkable district, a diverse set of uses. So commercial, employment sectors, residential, multifamily, single family as well. And part of this location also has some industrial manufacturing. So it's truly a diverse area, but we wanted to to develop something and adopt tools that would highlight that rather than change it terribly. So no plan obviously can be implemented without those tools. And at the APA conference, we had a lot of interest and conversation about the specific tools that we use to further the goals of the Gateway Crossing Area Plan. So I wanted to get into it a little bit more today for you all. As we mentioned, the effort was a long time in the making, and Nicole really brought that point home that we collaborated with a variety of individuals, property owners, regional governments. I think the state was involved through VDOT. We worked with local property owners, business owners, and public to develop this Gateway Crossing Area Plan. It was also something that required flexibility on our part. I think across the state and in our career field, we can often get into the planner speak, that you get too far into the weeds of plannerdom, as I'd say. So we wanted to have something that would meet the reality of the needs of business owners and property owners. So that required some flexibility on our part as well. So to get into it a little bit more about the Gateway Crossing overlay that we established 3 sub-districts in this location, the residential, the interstate business, and the community business sub-district, which all focused on different types of uses and a different feeling for individuals as they move through them, but all kind of catering to that need for a diverse pedestrian-oriented district. One major change to the overlay is that we expanded the use types that the districts could support. So there's a kind of a patchwork of zoning along the US 220 corridor. The community business subdistrict straddles both sides of the US 220 corridor, and it essentially permits any B2 use or general business district use by right. So it expands the types of uses that are allowed there and also increases the building height there to provide some more opportunities to do a denser, diverse development style. It also, to make use of more of your property, it reduced overall the parking requirements by 10%, an additional reduction for restaurant uses, and requires sidewalks for any new development along the 220 corridor or anything that's expanded by 15% or more. So it really starts to build out that pedestrian mobility that we're lacking in the area of Gateway Crossing. The Gateway Crossing area has a lot of small lots, very small lots that don't really function well for our current zoning. So what we did was we reduced the setbacks for those lots. We eliminated the floor area ratio, and we eliminated our impervious surface requirements in the Gateway Crossing location. And we went with the overlay option because we recognized that we wouldn't want to do that for property all throughout the county. It was very important for us to see some of these changes in this specific location, and it would make sense here and not necessarily in the Eagle Rock area or in northern Botetourt. It was exceptionally critical for us to provide those tools and those opportunities without changing the base zoning. So that's why we went the overlay there. And then finally, there's a little piece of our maximum signage that we wanted to kind of tinker with, to play with. We've got an overall cap on signage for property with smaller caps involved for the different types of signs. So this simply removes that maximum cap and allows people to take the full use of the signage that's permitted on a piece of property without having to have a somewhat arbitrary cap on maximum signage there. So I'm going to turn it, I think, back to Nicole real quick, and she's going to talk about successes that we've seen from that Gateway Crossing overlay, as well as some of the new development that has occurred outside of the overlay as well.
There is a lot of great questions that are coming in about the Gateway Crossing, and we can happily get back to folks on that at a later date. Since we're focusing a little bit on housing here, what I do want to talk a little bit more and focus on, just because we're so limited on time here to the hour, I will say that a lot of what was so great about the Gateway Crossing overlay is that we did focus one particular section, the residential subdistrict, allowing the height limitations and the FAR to be reduced. And a lot of these standards that we're talking about allowed the multifamily to come in. We still required that special exception permit for the density and for the height, which allowed the board to have a little bit more control over the conditions in terms of substantial conformance to elevations and design and those types of things. So that was a really good opportunity for us to say, okay, if you're going to this type of density or this type of height, we can still have a little bit of control over those types of conditions that the board can impose. We work hand in hand with the development community here. We're a staff of the community development team is a staff of 12. But in terms of the zoning team, I'll just say, and long range planning, in terms of, Botetourt, we have John is our long range planner. We have our zoning administrator and another day-to-day planner and an admin assistant. And then my background is in planning, but I oversee the entire development services team. So I split my time with the building side and stormwater, as well as the land use side. So we're pretty busy. But the benefit of being so small is we have a lot of one-on-one conversations with the development community. And I think we have a lot of, so you'll see here in the slide that John has pulled up, as you can tell that a lot of the lots that we have are very small. And so a lot of shared use parking, yes, that shared parking, yes, there's a provision in the entire underlying ordinance about parking, but we do in the gateway crossing reduce the parking requirements. There's a lot of allowances that allow some of those smaller lots that were had some development restrictions just based on their size. A lot of the FAR, the impervious surface, a lot of those things were not developing just by nature of the fact that the suburban style of the zoning ordinance was just limiting a lot of the redevelopment potential. But in terms of where we really try to focus is how can we looked at a lot of the uses that we knew would be a great fit for gateway crossing that would encourage mixed use and would specifically encourage some opportunities for residential infill development, and how could we relax those standards to encourage some of the development to occur in places that may not otherwise occur. I have to get my chat box out of the way. Give me 1 second. Okay. So as you can see here, and this is a slide that we did, I believe, at the conference in the summer, and this is probably a very outdated slide because we are getting inquiries daily on redevelopment potential. And I'm going to just go on to the next slide so we can talk about the residential growth that's occurred and so since 2017, so since our efforts really have been underway, and again, a lot of the ability for us to be able to say, okay, well, we've had this great thing occur. This is a really sharp looking opportunity. And a lot of community conversations over, okay, what has the impact been? What hasn't the impact been? It's been really productive to have this conversation. But since 2017, we've had 1,500 units. Again, if you look at the total amount of housing units in Botetourt County, it's a very significant number, especially to see the 1,000 apartment units. And so the reserve, that particular apartment was the first series of apartment buildings that came in following the market study that said that Botetourt could support that. And I frequently ask folks, like, how much traffic have you noticed as a result of that apartments? And a lot of folks will say, well, I didn't even really know that those apartments were back there. You really don't notice it. And then we have another apartments are getting ready to come to CO right now, which is 288 multifamily units. The Roanoke Road apartments was a direct result of the Gateway Crossing Overlay District. Again, this allowed them to go to 4 stories. This allowed them to park the units on the site. A lot of things that they would not have otherwise been able to do if the overlay standards had not been in place. They are they're pouring slab right now. So we're going to see them go vertical any day. The Delville Town Center, if you've been to Botetourt or if you're aware of it, it was a T&D that started it was approved in 2005. So that was when I graduated from graduate school, and I used to drive by that for a long time. And then when the housing market crashed, there was no development for a very long time. And so seeing this fully built out is a huge deal for Botetourt. It's a huge deal for folks who want to live and work in Botetourt. We've seen a lot of industrial growth. We've seen a lot of folks who just really want to be a part of the community. And so we're seeing again, seeing the townhouse, seeing the attached dwelling units, seeing some of the smaller lot residential development, and just seeing the community and seeing the sense of community there. It's been really great to see that, and knowing that they're about to reach full build out. It's been wonderful. We've got a lot of the zero lot line developments that are under construction right now. And John will talk about this. There are barriers, there are still obstacles, there are still things, there's work to be done. The Sanderson Ridge and the Preserve at Ashley, these are 1,400 to 2,000 square foot homes, and they're still selling for 600,000. I mean, the demand for these types of homes, of course, these are your patio homes. The demand for these in the market, there's still a huge market. So we still have work to do in terms of that, missing middle housing stock, which I'm going to talk a little bit about that and one developer's approach. I see a lot of potential webinars and potential presentations in the future as that comes up. So, again, still seeing single family, still seeing multifamily inquiries come in. We have another rezoning for a potential cluster development. That was another great tool where we reduced some of the obstacles to development just by sitting down with a developer or someone. Maybe I'm not necessarily sure I would use the word developer. I would say someone who has a piece of property who would like to provide housing in the county, who sees a need, who maybe isn't as experienced with developing residential, but would like to do that. Okay, sitting down with them and saying, have you really thought about what you want? And if you do you want to build houses, or do you want a community for Botetourt? Well, if we can have a conversation about cluster development and how you can reduce your infrastructure costs at the same time and provide something, that could really be something that you could be proud of, then let's sit down and talk about that. Let's talk with your engineering team. And let's see what that looks like and see how the ordinance might be able to support that. Then these are the kinds of conversations that being in a small community, and having a small team that we have the opportunity to do and still be able to do, as being in a small world. So I'm going to touch a little bit about something we touched on at the APA conference, briefly, because it was approved the night before. John and I shut down a public hearing. I believe it was 10 or 11 o'clock when we got out, and then we had to turn around and present the next day. So we did not get a chance to talk about the harvest at Blue Ridge. But again, this is going to be something as it develops, that I think that the folks that are developing this are going to have a lot to be proud of. So it's called the Harvest at Blue Ridge. It's 437 units. It was designed with the community, literally designed by the community with the community. 90-acre former apple and other types of agricultural property that has not been utilized for agricultural since 2015. And it really was an interesting process. The developers brought in Tom Lowe out of Charlotte, who is from Roanoke. And if anybody's familiar with his work, he authored Light Imprint Design. So he talks a lot about low impact development, and really had no development plan when they came and sat down with the community. So very intensive charrette process over a couple weeks in September of 2022. Really met with everybody, and then kind of really drew into the plans as they worked through the process about what they wanted to retain, what they wanted to celebrate, what they thought that could look like, and then work through the master plan. And what I find really interesting, and we got lots of questions about at the conference, is that it really required some drastic changes to the T&D ordinance, to the tune of 1,000 square foot lot size for a new use, what they like to call cottage dwelling. So this was a way that the development community really wanted to talk about different types of housing that could support different types of housing, right? So not just single family, but you've got your 6-plexes or your 8-plexes. And then they have a new cottage dwelling. This is a 24 foot lot, 1,000 square feet. Now, the ordinance would cap that at 10% of your total in terms of, I think it's housing units. I have to go back and look at that, but it really reduced a lot of standards for the attached dwellings to enable these 4, 6, and 8 plexes. But you have to remember with a T&D, you do have a lot more of an ability to have tie down your design guidelines and tie down your guidance documents and your layouts and those kinds of things. And so this was really a almost a year process of one of our staff members, really, well, most of our staff members just going back and forth with him a lot to make sure that, number one, that the design and the construction could work, working with the building department to make sure these kinds of things could feasibly work, working with the fire department and EMS folks to make sure that, they could accommodate these kinds of things. They've got, alleyways and park fronted dwellings where some of these lots are only accessed by alleyways. And that is a lot. That is a major, major change from what you might otherwise envision from a suburban style type development. But we know that especially with the land costs and the development costs being what they are, especially in Botetourt, that there's a lot that has to be done to get folks in homes that are affordable, right? And it's very, very tricky to figure out ways to get that done. And so a lot of work went into that. And we know that they're in design, in engineering. They continue to work towards this. And so it'll be an interesting thing as we continue to work through it. But I think the board wanted to have a lot of confidence that if they were going to make such drastic changes to the ordinance, that they would, again, have comfort and confidence. This is something that would be unique to the T&D district. There are not so many large areas where T&Ds can go in Botetourt County. And also that, again, it could be feasible. So there are some things that I really encourage from the planning perspective, lessons learned and things to do that John will get into when it comes to housing is, really being able to communicate with your building department, communicate with your, again, with all of the folks that you interact with, spending time with VDOT or spending time with your traffic engineers, really just spending time with your stormwater folks, just all of the cross-disciplinary ways that you can make sure that you can give your board some comfort that these kinds of things can happen or they can't happen. And then, you can go back and forth. The original package that these folks had presented, it was a lot more, I don't want to use the word radical, but another word fails me at the moment than this. But we were able to come back and say, well, we really chewed on this, and we don't think you need to go down to 4,000 square feet on your single family attached. We think you can go from 8,000 to 6,000, and here's why. And so the package that ended up going to the planning commission at the board, it wasn't as drastic as what they'd originally presented, because we continued to have those communications and work and get their application to the best possible place that it could be prior to going to planning commission, and prior to going to the board of supervisors. So so there is a lot going on. A lot of different things coming. We don't have enough staff. We're hiring. If anyone knows anyone that's interested in helping our building folks keep up, I have to throw that in there. And also I want to thank the Berkeley group as well, because they did help us as well with fact checking our Gateway Crossing overlay. The board did want to have a third party look at it once we firmed it up. So, never be afraid to kind of go back and say, well, let's look at this one more time. I guess don't be afraid of the opponents, because sometimes they may be able to find something through all the noise that maybe you can make it a little bit better. And with that being said, John has a lot more to share in terms of lessons learned and the planning aspect of all the things that we did. So I think it's time for me to turn that back over to him. Thank you all.
Yeah, so I think to put a too fine a point on what Nicole just said is this Harvest of Blue Ridge piece really came about because of an unwillingness to say no to a new idea. And I think that's kind of the spirit of housing development and new development localities that, at first this seemed pie in the sky, just complete out of outer space type development. But once you drilled a little farther into it, we realized, oh, there is an opportunity here to change some of our ordinance with the understanding that each rezoning to a T&D requires a master plan. So each one is going to be a little unique. It's going to be a little different, and it's not necessarily going to follow the same path as the one before it. This one is drastically different from the Daleville Town Center, which is our first and premier T&D in the county. And so that unwillingness to say no and a desire to say, let's see what we can do made this project happen. If for whatever reason, if we dug our heels in and said, no way, this is never going to work, they probably wouldn't have continued down this path. But Nicole and the Board of Supervisors and administration have instilled that it's never a no, it's a yes, but type situation. Yes, but let's see how we can work this in to existing ordinances. What do we need to tailor to get this to the finish line? And ultimately, I think it's a better product for everybody in the county and for the potential new residents of that community there. So not to focus too much on Harvest of Blue Ridge, I wanted to get back into the work that we still have to do. So Nicole said it exactly right. This is all fantastic. This is all great, but job growth continues in the region, and we are still not at a point that we have enough housing to meet that need. We had a follow-up to our housing market analysis in 2023, just this past year, that studied the rental market, not only in Botetourt, but also in the greater Roanoke Valley. There was no noticeable impact to apartment occupancy rates, despite the fact that we had so many new apartment units come onto the market. So it shows to us that there is still people looking for work or looking for places to live and are interested in an apartment lifestyle and a multifamily lifestyle, something that's not your traditional suburban development. So with Botetourt remaining a desirable place to live and work, we still need to find locations that make sense for housing. We still need to look ahead and see if there's an opportunity to find areas that would be supportive of this type of housing. The affordability is a key piece to it. 2020, COVID has definitely changed the market for housing, and rental rates have gone very high, and it's become a lot more difficult for people to find places to live. So that missing middle housing, I think, is getting even more narrow. I think there's a need and an opportunity to find some sort of middle ground, to find housing that supports both potential commercial on the bottom, affordable units, and a mixture there. We don't have a lot of individuals in the community or a lot of developers that have been seeking the low-income housing tax credit opportunities, but maybe moving forward, there is something that we need to look into there as well. But ultimately, we want to preserve that balance of development and open space. And we also, I believe somebody had mentioned a question in the chat about how community members kind of took this change. It was a mixed bag. To be perfectly honest, I think there was a lot of concern, a lot of fear over what this meant. And so it took a lot of work to express the benefits of not only the Gateway Crossing overlay, but the benefits of development in general. We worked really closely with our media team on our communications team to develop some FAQs, some media slots, some newsletters that really identified and discussed what this was and kind of tried to get out ahead of some of the misconceptions of what it wasn't. So there was a real pressing effort to really meet that need. So communication is super important. I think there's still a lot of misconceptions about growth out there, especially in our community, I'm sure in your own as well, that we're working to address today. And so I wanted to touch on some of the reflections and applicability of what we've done here. As I just said, public response has not always been positive. Growth and development is always kind of a touchy subject, and it's always something that concerns folks. So that is something that we're actively working on and will continue to work on with each public decision that gets made. The coordination of timelines between organizations has sometimes been complicated. What I mean by that is, with each new development, you might have a traffic impact analysis. You might have people that are newer to the development world that don't understand our own timelines. Just working to find opportunities to streamline that is something that we're working on now. Between our exterior partners, the folks that are in Botetourt County, like fire and EMS, that have their reviews to do as well. Just finding opportunities to streamline some of that stuff and be able to communicate to developers why we do the things we do and what they need to do to get the project to continue to keep working. Working with partners is of utmost importance, of course. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and just having those open lines of communication are incredibly important for the success of any project. But I think the most important thing, most important takeaway is just that the bedrock of our success has been that clear vision and sustaining leadership, that despite some of the more controversial projects that might come, despite rezonings for multifamily apartments or new commercial development, there has been a willingness for our elected officials, our administration, our staff to hear concerns and not just pay lip service to them, but to actually hear those concerns and work to find ways to address those, rather than, I'd say, for lack of a better word, railroading a project through the public process. We definitely try very hard to make sure people understand the importance and the reason for some of these projects, and definitely do not try to sugarcoat anything. I think the worst thing you can do is minimizing some concerns and just recognizing, some of the current concerns you might have for traffic, but then connecting people to the experts and understanding the data as well, for any decision is incredibly important. So I think that is the majority of our slides. Just continue to discuss the housing variety and affordability are big needs in Botetourt. You need to gather that data and set planning goals. As you saw way back in 2007 and earlier, the things that we've done have consistently led to projects or have consistently led to conversations. And then following through on planning efforts takes more time, determination, and collaboration than we'd probably hope from time to time. But it's definitely a critical piece to it, that it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen just by, let's say, an angel investor or somebody coming in and just completely starting the engine. It's going to take a variety of individuals, a lot of work and determination, to make this actually happen. And we don't think, while we think that Botetourt itself is very unique and a great place to live and work, we don't think that it's the only locality, the only market that could have this kind of model work for them or work for us. We feel like something can be done in other localities that would take this kind of model and really ramp it up in your own. So we don't think it's unique to us. There's certainly factors that probably help us. There's certainly factors that probably hurt us as well as far as housing development is concerned. But it's definitely something that can be worked upon and tailored and tinkered on for other localities. So that is what we have. I know there's been a lot of chats that have come through as far as questions, so we can definitely work to answer that. And I think that you have maybe the opportunity to unmute yourself and ask questions as well. Jillian, correct me if I'm wrong, but definitely just appreciate all your time and happy to answer questions as they come through.
Jonathan, you are right. You can use the raise hand feature to request to be unmuted. And it looks like we do have an individual, Chelsea Jeffries. I'm going to go ahead and allow Chelsea to talk. If Chelsea has a question. It may have been accidental. Chelsea, go ahead and speak if you would like to ask your question orally. Alrighty, well, if you want to go ahead and address some of the other questions and while we wait.
Sure, I think Nicole, I see Nicole's been answering some questions here, but I think it'd be useful to expand on some of them. I think somebody asked about the floor area ratio, and Nicole definitely addressed that, but just to really bring it home, a lot of the lots along 220 are teeny tiny. They're very, very small lots that just, with the way that the zoning ordinance is today, there's no way that these lots would be ever developed. You would have to acquire a lot of property, assemble several lots together, rezone them all, and by the time that all comes together, you're talking numbers that just do not work for profit. And so the overlay really intended to address some of that, and try to make some of those smaller lots work. That's through the reduction of the parking, through some reduction of the setbacks and removal of that FAR and impervious surface requirements. Otherwise, those lots would remain vacant for years. And we're seeing some of them develop. We're seeing a lot of interest in some of them. I'm trying to think of any of those really smaller lots that have developed just yet, but I'm not sure that we've received any interest right at the top of my head over the teeny tiny ones. But I think as we continue to move forward, you're going to see some of those actual developments occur on the property itself.
So I'll jump in, and a couple different things I'm going to try to knock out with questions. So some of the questions are about affordability. So basically, in terms of affordability, I think that right now we're working with the development community on what is the market support, what does that look like. Again, we did not have any type of rental housing really before these apartments were developed, and so in the county, I think affordable housing at this point was really looking like some manufactured housing. We don't have access to services at this point. We don't have transit. We don't really have the type of access to services that you would see in the more urban environment. And so I think it's really trying to understand what that looks like, and really looking in terms of that. We're working with the region, which is another question that's come up. What are the other jurisdictions doing? How are we working with the regional area? So the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission, we work with them. We're working in microtransit options, looking at opportunities for microtransit at this point, I think, in terms of rather than what does the bigger transit picture look like? And so understanding, again, that's the next step in the bigger picture, right? And so hopefully that will answer that question in terms of affordability and what that looks like in Botetourt specifically, and what that looks like in a rural environment. In terms of schools, we know that there is capacity in the schools. So we have worked closely with every residential development. We always reach out to the school system and ask them to address what that impact is. And there is capacity, with the exception of one of our middle schools, there is capacity in every school system to accommodate students. And so our superintendent continues to say that's their job is to educate students, and that there's capacity for that. So there are a lot of conversations right now, ongoing conversations about the school system and what that looks like in Botetourt. So those are great questions. And then, did the housing study address preferred mix of housing types that would be best supported in the area? There's still a lot of regulatory barriers when we really started this. So if you think about, again, where did we start? We started from a bedroom community where we have a lot of housing stock that is on, 1 acre lots, and the median, again, 90% owner occupied, median housing value, 500 plus. And so, where we are is, where is there suitable opportunity to provide higher density housing opportunities? Where is there suitable land for multifamily and for attached single family? Where is there opportunity for, again, stratifying the housing type so that we can continue, again, to work on housing opportunities in that way? And then we just need to continue to work in that direction. Another question about the charrette that we got was it just Botetourt? No, it was not. There were literally folks from the development community. There were folks from the real estate community. There were folks from the banking community. There were folks from, I'm looking at the schedule. They have a great website. It's harvest@blueridge.com, and there are tons of information there, but they had, every session had a different topic. They talked about, marketing, economic development, parks and recreation. It sounds like it's development, focused around government topics, but they had different folks from the community come in, and they invited all of the neighbors to the charrette. It was very interesting to see when they had the public hearing that there was a lot of support from the neighboring community. Thank you for sending that link. Let me see. Do you see anything else in there, John? Questions to answer? Oh, Renaissance did the housing analysis. So Stu Patz and Associates did our multifamily, and you can probably find that on our website, but we can send those links out. We actually had the original one done, and then the one that was done in, it's probably been about a year now, that said that the regional market could support a lot of additional multifamily housing in the region. And then, but Renaissance did the bigger housing study. Then it came with a typology guide, so it really looked at different opportunities for the different types of housing that could potentially work in Botetourt, as well as a policy guide, which helped us really look at what different types of policy changes could we make to support, again, stratifying housing types in the county.
There's all sorts of fantastic questions in here, and if we run out of time to get to them, I think that our emails are available online or available after the presentation. So definitely want to encourage you all to send us an email if you've got something you want to drill down into further. We can share resources, the background documents, any of the information that you'd be interested in having, and definitely want to give you the opportunity to do so. So we think that this is a pretty cool topic. We think it's been a very interesting and exciting ride, and it's not over yet. So we definitely want to see where it's going to go, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jonathan and Nicole. And we have, I mean, I know that it is 1:00, so if you have to drop off, of course, to our attendees, but if there are a couple of attendees that have any remaining questions, we can spare 1 or 2 minutes. But John is correct in stating that we will be sharing their emails, our speaker emails, with all attendees in the coming days in a follow-up email, which will also include the webinar recording, link to the YouTube, and the presentation slide decks. So if you think of anything after today that you didn't get a chance to ask, you're welcome to reach out to our speakers like that. But it looks like we're getting a lot of just awesome feedback. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions that you think you can answer the next minute or so, John and Nicole?
Looking at Nicole, I can't recall if you kind of covered the fiscal impact models. That was a great question for that. I'm not sure if Matt is still here. So we have a lot of things we require developers to submit with those applications. A fiscal impact model is not necessarily one that we've required in the past. We do encourage and also send all of the rezonings and special exception permits to what we call our internal and external partners, I suppose. So the school system has an opportunity to review any rezoning in SCP. Fire and rescue have that opportunity. VDOT has the opportunity. The sheriff's department takes a look at it if they're interested in it, and we feel that they should weigh in. So our partners have those opportunities to review the applications and let us know if they have any concerns. And so that's typically how we address that. Nicole, I don't know if you want to expand on that any or not, but that's typically how we address those specifically, but we don't require that fiscal impact analysis.
No, that was a good answer.
Trying to see developers interested in HUD programs. I think we do have some interest. I think some developers are always a little iffy about taking advantage of those just based off the constraints that they're required to consider. It's kind of a case by case basis. It's definitely an opportunity for them to take advantage of, and one that we'll steer them towards if we feel like it would be beneficial to the project. But I don't think we see a lot of projects trying to take advantage of any of those types of tools. And then I think there's a question if we're seeing or addressing affordability. I mean, affordability is difficult, of course. And from my personal take, I think if you can provide that mix of housing, you get closer to meeting that affordability need. But it's one that is not seeing immediate results, I don't think. I think a lot of the developments we're seeing probably are that mid to higher range price point, just by nature of the markets. But we definitely are pushing and are interested to see a greater variety of those price points. I know that's not a great answer, but hopefully we're moving more towards that than further away from it. I think that might be it. Again, just if you're still on the call and are interested in asking some questions, feel free to shoot us an email with those questions, and we'd be more than happy to either hop on a phone call or work out a Teams call or anything you want to kind of get you those answers. But just want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jonathan and Nicole, very much, and for sharing your insight and all the work that you're doing in Botetourt. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jillian, for getting it set up, and all of your team and all of Virginia APA for asking us to do it. It's definitely something we love talking about, and always happy to share all the cool things that we were involved in at Botetourt. So definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. And again, keep your eyes peeled on your inboxes for that follow-up email with all the helpful resources you may need. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
I'll take care.